Hi, guys. Welcome to the Independent Creatives Podcast. My name is West. Today I have my new friend John with me. John, do you want to give us an introduction?
Sure. Hey, I'm John McDavitt, and I am an artist, illustrator, sculptor when necessary, and work primarily in product development over the years. But I've been through mural projects and just pure illustration for clients as well. Toy, gaming, video games, slot machines. I've worked at a variety of different studios who service different clients, including Happy Meal toys and kind of all over the place. So I'd say probably my strengths, my biggest strength is probably drawing. And then you can see there I have a channel on YouTube, and it's also a podcast where I've interviewed artists like you do, West. And I haven't put anything new up for a while. I've had a whole lot going on, but it's there's some neat things on there to check out. Look at that crazy guy to the left.
This guy, you with the airbrush.
Mm-hmm.
What is your experience with the airbrush? How airbrushing changed my life? What was this about?
So when I was in 8th grade, my dad bought me an airbrush. He bought me a Badger 150, and I think I put some paint through it, and I didn't know what to do with it. I don't even think I knew how to clean it out, and I'm in 8th grade, and you just don't know much about anything. And so I put it aside. I think I used it on a mural. A year later, I had this incredible middle school experience with this art teacher, Mr. Scott, who he ran a mural program where you would get a wall and you could paint anything you wanted on it. And you just had to get it done in the 2 weeks. And that last mural I did I graduated 8th grade, and I came back and asked, hey, can I do a mural? And I think a girlfriend and I painted this mural I designed, and I used the airbrush on it just in little bits, and it didn't function really well. But then when I was graduating high school, I didn't have plans to go to a 4-year university. I was going to get into special effects makeup, so I was running after that. But I had to make a living, and I graduated at the end of the 80s, and airbrush T-shirts was pretty big, and I found my way into that. And within a few months, I was making some money, and within a few months after that, I was making good money. And then I want to say it was a year or so later, that Christmas, I was working for myself, and I cleared 11,000 in a month. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, this tool is fantastic, and I don't ever want to work for anybody else again. So it kind of led me on an entrepreneurial journey as well. So airbrushing been very, very good to me.
Okay, so airbrushing mostly for doing murals, but also for T-shirts?
Yeah, it was mostly T-shirts early on, but airbrushing, it was my college in a lot of ways, because, a client comes up, a person comes up and they want a T-shirt, and, they may not want a design you've got up. They may be interested in it, but now they want a name, and it's got to have a heart here. And then can you put the number 2 down at the bottom? And could you do caricature of me, or can you do a car? And I didn't say no to anybody. I just took everything and I would do it. So I was learning how to serve the client's desire. And then I was learning how to take my drawing skills and put them within a parameter, and then my airbrush skills and my sales skills and managing money. So it really, it was such a great little business. It's a great business to get into if you want to be an artist, learning how to do all those things.
Okay, yeah. So it taught you all these valuable skills, and then from there you took that business know-how that you got from doing airbrushing the T-shirts, and then you expanded that into all the other stuff it is that you do, the product design, the game design stuff you've done, the illustrations. like I told you before we started the podcast, like I'm gonna pull up your website. I'm really interested in like picking your brain about the business side of things.
Sure.
And how you recommend approaching clients and that sort of thing. But let's take a look at your website and then we'll talk about that. So this is your homepage, and like I told you whenever we were talking previously, what really impressed me was like you really have this this good balance. This is an awesome paint. What is this done with? Was that Michael Jordan airbrush or what?
That was Procreate. I painted him in
Procreate.
Procreate. That's an illustration.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks awesome. So you have this great balance between having your own creativity and then also serving other people with your work. So I guess we can go through some of the stuff it is that you've done. You've done product design. So this is different stuff it is that you've done for toys.
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything. There's toys in there. There's food goods, and there was a food craft company I worked for. There's slot machines, and then I'm just throwing a variety of things out there for clients to see and just to get an idea of what it is I can do. I think a lot of clients are actually confused by all of this because people want to put you into a silo. They like want to. People want to be able to explain you in simple terms, but it doesn't really work that way for the stuff maybe we do. And then I'm a part of the process in product design. Like I didn't sculpt those. I designed them. I painted them. I'm involved in the process. I don't think I did any sculpting on those. I would work with this incredible sculptor design studio, a guy named Dave Link. And then you can see like I've got turnarounds for sculptors. So I would create, that was a candle for Wilton Industries. And I would create, take obviously the left side is an existing piece of art from the licensor. And then I get the dimensions on there and then I create these turnarounds for the sculptor. Because a sculptor, a sculptor, I guess a sculptor can visualize the turnaround, but with product development, time is so important. You want everybody to be on the same page. So if the person commissioning this or the company commissioning it has that blueprint, then everybody's on the same page.
Okay. And so if we go, let's look at your illustration stuff. Yeah, these are great.
Thanks, man.
Especially this. This is awesome.
Yeah, that's a personal piece, and that's my son. And my son was a little bit older than the character represented in there, but I had him pose and I took the photo, and then I younged him up a little bit. And I would say I probably, like I can paint in a variety of maybe genres and styles, but this is probably me. Like it's I like whimsy and I like kind of encouraging but realistic pieces. I don't know, like it's it feels warm, but he could be a show of strength if he needed, right?
Sure. Yeah. So are you doing? Is this Procreate as well?
That was Procreate. Yeah. Like I work almost exclusively in Procreate unless I need something out of Photoshop, and then I'll get into Photoshop and I work in Adobe Illustrator as well. And then I can paint if we need to do a painting, if you want something like that. But pixels, they're so cheap and you can do so much with them now. Yeah, that was for a client that thought they were going to need some paintings of Bond villains, and they hired me to put these in their back pocket if they couldn't use any other licensed work. They were going to have me do this style. So I got 3 of them commissioned. Those were fun. Yeah, just again, that kind of goes back to my dragon, right? That kind of whimsical, fun style. Well, I think it's fun anyway.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I guess the other thing is like the other thing that I like about what you have with your work is that it fits cohesively together, but there's variety there, which I think is something that is like it's a challenge for creative people to do that, right? Because I think creatives, you know, we naturally want to jump around and do different things.
Yeah.
You know, like our interest is all over the place. Like you said, people want to put us in a box and say, okay, you're the guy who does the whimsical dragons, but your interest is like it's everywhere. You know, you're interested in every aspect of your creativity, but it still fits together cohesively. And I think that's definitely a challenge for creatives to do, right? Because to the average person, you know, maybe paintings and comics and product design, they may not seem to go together, but if your voice is developed, then people can see that, right?
Yeah, and I don't know that I was purposeful about the voice I developed, apart from I wanted to make a living working as an artist. So I've been a working artist my whole, I mean, since I was 18, and to varying degrees. I mean, you know, it was a challenge through my 20s on and off as I was moving into more into product development, and then my 30s was like, I mean, I had a small design firm. You know, it was fantastic, and it almost killed me. I mean, it was so much work. And then you know, now I feel like I'm you know, I've got a nice balance, and I have some level of mastery over my craft. You know, you're always learning. You never reach the pinnacle, right? You're always learning. You hear that from every artist, but you know, again, this guy is kind of my style, right? Like that's very much me. And you know, working, I've been more of a character guy my whole life, and I'm working more at this stage in my career on environments, and that's been kind of a joy. Caricatures has been kind of a natural thing for me too, through airbrushing. So you know, that Jordan is kind of caricatured. This guy, this Lon Chaney, I don't know if you've ever seen clips from London After Midnight, but really, if you see London After Midnight clips or images, I don't think there are any clips, but you'll see how wicked, how frightening. I mean, that image has lasted since the 20s or earlier, I believe. And then yeah, the next one, you know, I've always liked Bram Stoker's Dracula, that Greg Canham design, and the wig is wild. And you know, again, caricature. I was just thinking of trying to think of what that character is. Gossamer, that's what his name is, from the Warner Brothers cartoons, and they just looked like could be a similar shape. So
so he's like his barber or something.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah,
Kylo. And so I kind of go from this, like, that's a pretty realistic take on Walter White, and my caricatures are tend to be fairly realistic. And so I'm always straddling this world of I like realism, but just enough. It's like, go take a photo otherwise, right? It's like, I think that's from my airbrush days, because I was a photorealist, and I got kind of tired of that. And so I mean, this is a very stylized, I mean, almost a Struzan-esque style, right, on that guy.
When you're doing the so whenever you're doing the photorealistic pieces, I mean, you're pretty much doing it 1-to-1 to the actual photo, or you're taking a little bit of creative liberties with like the color and whatnot, but the proportions are pretty much determined by the photo.
I'll take creative liberties, and it depends where I'm pushing it. Like if I'm pushing it more towards caricature, then I'll find something to or some things to exaggerate. And then if I'm going, you know, if I'm doing a literal portrait, then it'll be less so, right? Like the Bond villains, they're pretty much that's what they look like. Like that was the task, was to make those guys look more realistic. But you can see a lot of those caricatures there. And then, the Big League Chew guys, those were recreations. So there was original art, and they needed to fix some things on that because they just wanted to bring it up to date, but they wanted to keep the style. So sometimes I'll get called to recreate things.
Yeah, man. Let's take a look at your characters and concepts. That's the one I'm really wanting to get to.
Cool.
This is awesome. This Norm Macdonald right here.
Thanks.
One of my favorite comedians. Beautiful piece.
Yeah, he was very funny, and he was very like he would say it, and I mean he could go really crude at times, but I would also say he was probably one of the smartest comedians of the last 30 years.
Yeah. Is this traditional or is this
Procreate?
Digital? Procreate. Wow.
Digital.
You got a lot of awesome brushes. That you got some crazy.
It's
cool
funny.
textures.
I use 2 brushes pretty much. I use a couple more now because I've been in a different project, but I don't really use pencil anymore. I guess I used to use the pencil brush. They have like a 2B and a 6B, but I use soft airbrush in there, and I pretty much get almost everything with the soft airbrush. And then I guess I'm lying because I use the charcoal brush to get some of the texture. If you add that texture in, like you can really see it in the Vigo. Is it Vigo or whatever the Taika Waititi guy is? If you can go in on him for a second. He's next to Christina Applegate on the row below.
Oh, this guy?
Second one over, yeah. That's if you click on that, you'll see kind of that charcoal background. That's the charcoal brush in Procreate. It's really nice. It adds a lot of texture. It gets you a lot of the way there.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I need to revisit Procreate. I'm usually using Clip Studio these days. Clip Studio, the brushes are not as fun. I found that Krita has some really cool brushes. I don't know if you've messed around with Krita, but Krita's
not really. Like when I find something, and I'm really, I would say I'm maybe other artists would find me kind of boring. I find a couple of tools I like, and I just use those. It's like, okay, that's all I need to get my stuff done.
Yeah. So from looking at the stuff it is that you have here, when I see your character concept stuff, like it's interesting because this is not exactly the portfolio I would imagine somebody who does concept art would have. I would think that you would have like more turnarounds and more like iteration stuff. Is there a reason for that, or have you found that
only
hasn't...
if it's needed, I'll do it.
Okay.
A lot of, again, you saw like the Care Bears, right? And the turnarounds. Yeah. So if it's needed, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And I can draw pretty quickly these days. So, the more you draw, the more you do, you just start to fly. It's not that you don't have days that aren't a struggle. Like I have some days it's like, all right, it's time to go to bed. Tomorrow will be a new day, but if the clock's ticking, you have to, so you get it done.
Yeah. Let's look at these murals. So wow. Yeah, this is awesome.
Thanks,
man.
This is
something you did for a school?
It was a library.
Okay.
Yeah, so they contacted me, and it's interesting because this library at one point had about 100 feet of mural from me, and a new director came in. And when somebody new comes in and they want to make a change, they make changes. So they redesigned everything, painted over it all, and then when he left, I guess the new director was in, and about 2 months later, they called me like, "Hey, can we get another mural in here? And we have this curved wall." And I said, "Sure." So I remember going in, and so here, this is a good example of maybe how to manage a client situation or a potential client situation. So first off, they already know me. I'm a known commodity, so I had that advantage going in. And then I know I specifically knew one of the people who were kind of in the marketing art aspect of the library, and great lady. And again, she had known me from the prior work that I had done, so I kind of had this bridge person. And so I went and I met with, I want to say, the director and then of the library, and then the director of the junior room, or the children's part of the library. And they knew that they wanted something on this wall. They had no idea what. And they knew that it needed to work somewhere between the ages of like 18 years old all the way down to toddler.
Yeah.
So it's got to be broad. It can't be scary. It can't be too simple or playful. It's got to be something that it appeals to everybody and doesn't turn anybody off, which you can't. I mean, somebody's not going to like it, whatever. But for the most part, you gotta get those bases covered. And so I had this idea, and I just said, okay, what in my mind I'm thinking, all right, I still want to paint what I want to paint. How do I make it so broad I can paint what I want? And I don't think it's necessarily a trope, but the book's opening and then the pages coming to life was my way in. And so I suggested that, and I did a rough little sketch right there. If you're meeting with a client and you have the opportunity to showcase your skills and do some drawings and talk them through it, it's like magic. Like they love that, because people are so rarely around artists. And so you get to invite them into your world, and they're participating in it, and most people are amazed by it. It really does look like magic to them. And so I did the initial sketch, and I think it was like a rocket and a whale, and it was this, and the city at the bottom is Chicago, but up close is Downers Grove, where this is located. And they had is that me? There it was me. And they had really liked the prior mural, and there was a part of the one of the murals I had done that was like the city. And I said, what if we do a callback to what I'd done before? It's a different vantage, different perspective, but let's do the city down there. And they're all these books are flying out of the library, and it's just all the wonderful things that the library provides, from ballet to medieval stories, to dinosaurs, to bear, all these things. And they loved it. And so I went a little further on the design then, once we agreed, and then they commissioned me to do it.
Yeah, it looks like an awesome piece, man. So yeah, maybe we should gear the conversation now towards what do you, because you've done some teaching as well. Wow, this is an awesome Abraham Lincoln piece too.
Thank you.
Man. So you've also done some teaching.
Yeah.
And in your podcast, The Breakthrough Creative on YouTube, which I'll put the link in the description box. It seems like you also talk a lot about the business aspect of trying to make it as a creative. So I'm curious, like if somebody is getting in the field now and they're wanting to make connections with clients and things like that. Let's say that they want to make clients that are online. They want to do stuff remotely. What is your experience? What is your advice? What is your perspective on just like the way that artists should approach clients now?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I've kind of seen both sides, because I came up through I guess my career really started in the early 90s, right? And and it was pre-internet, and then it was internet, and then, you know, the last 10 years have been internet heavy, working remotely, and especially since COVID, right? So here's my 2 cents on all of that. If you can get in front of a client, it's better. Like if you can be in person with them, because there's something about seeing somebody and getting to know them and them getting to know you that builds a connection that is strong. So I didn't know that. I had no idea. And I guess I couldn't have known it because the internet wasn't around again when I got started. So as I was airbrushing t-shirts, I was having connection with people every day and direct connection with the client. And then I would have people come back, and then people get to know you, and they like you, and they want to get more stuff from you. And that's good. And that's how you build those relationships. And then, you know, let me back up just a little bit. And before airbrushing, I had no intention to be an airbrush artist. I was getting into special effects makeup. And the reason I got into airbrushing was because there's no special effects makeup to do in Chicago. And I didn't have enough skill to go and talk to anybody to say, hey, I can do this makeup job for you. But airbrushing was my way into creativity and into some financial solutions, and I loved it. And prior to that, I had contacted Dick Smith, who was the makeup artist who did the Godfather movies and The Exorcist and Amadeus. He won an Oscar for that one, and I called him because the effects guys out in LA were telling me he's the guy to talk to. And I called him when I was 15, and he called me back, and we started this conversation, and I began to study under him. He had this remote course, and he was very encouraging. And so I went out to LA when I was about 20 or so, and interviewed, because of Dick Smith and my relationship with him, all of these big effects studios. And I had a crazy connection up at ILM as well, in Skywalker Ranch. And when I came back from LA, what I walked away from LA with was, if I moved out there, people would give me work, but I had to move out there. And I didn't particularly care for LA. Terminator 2 had just come out, so maybe we must have been in 91 then, right, or 92. And I just saw the digital part of it coming in, and I thought, oh, this could be rough. Like I might not have as much work out there as I hope for, and I found that I didn't have the urge or the desire. Like if I'd had the desire, I would have moved, but I didn't have that. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to stay here. I'm going to airbrush, and I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to run my own show. Well, while I was airbrushing, this guy would come by, and it turned out after several weeks of him dropping in that he was a sculptor in the toy industry. And he had me out to his studio, and one thing led to another, and I started to work for him when he needed me. And that was my introduction to product design and toy design. And it was great, because it was like this, it was like special effects makeup's cousin, because a lot of the skill sets were the same. So I had another kind of wild thing happen while I was airbrushing. Some guy came up and asked me why I was using Pache airbrushes. And I turned around, and he was a businessman. And I remember thinking to myself, what does this guy care what airbrush it is I'm using? So I just asked, I said, well, this is what I have. They work well. And he opened his jacket, and he pulled a Badger airbrush out, a new one, and he handed it to me. And it was their competitor to the Pache VL, which is old school. You'll know what that is. But he gave me this airbrush. He said, that's yours. He said, I'm Ken Schlappfeld. I'm I think he was the VP at the time of Badger. His dad owned the company, started the company. He said, would you come and meet with me Monday? I said, yeah. So I went and met with him. They were in Chicago, of course. And I walked out with a consultancy. So I was on retainer with them monthly. So they would send me all over the States, and I went to Germany a couple times for them to airbrush, demonstrate, teach, and that wouldn't have happened if I wasn't out in the public with people. It wouldn't happen if I wasn't by people. Now we live in a different era, right? And there's art everywhere. I mean, I'll post something on Instagram and I'll get 7 likes, which I don't really care. I'm just putting stuff out there. But it's a very competitive world. And so what I would suggest is how can you cut through the competition? How can you slice through? So you're working on how to become skilled at your craft. So if you're a visual artist, if you're in our realm, right, you're trying to draw better and paint better and create better and storytell better, right, in what it is you do. And then you're trying to get noticed. So you've got to figure that out. And then I'm always trying to get in front of people. Like if I can get in front of someone, I have a 90% chance or better of landing that gig, whatever it is. And so my suggestion would be is find out what companies are in your area that do anything that needs something similar to what it is you do. Because that's what I would do. I would walk through the stores and, I'm in Chicago, right? Or outside of Chicago. So I have it's a massive city and there's a lot of business going on here and a lot of manufacturers and designers. And so I can find places and then you got to try and get in front of people. So I've done that through trade shows. I got one of my biggest clients through going to a trade show for Badger Airbrush. It was Wilton Industries at the time. And I remember I walked up to them and I saw their product and I just asked, I'm a designer. I introduced myself, John McDavitt, I'm a designer. And I'm wondering, do you guys use outside designers? And the person said, yeah, let me introduce you to Vivica. So I went over and I got introduced to Vivica and Kathy. And I told them what I did. I told them I'm in Chicago. I was like 20 minutes away from where they were set up. And they said, would you come meet with us Monday, whatever? And I said, yeah. And so I went in and I walked out with a project. And this was just before the internet. Like, I think I was faxing designs over to them, like marker renderings, black marker drawings. And then I went in and I would get another project. And then what I would do, because I was still an unknown commodity, when I finished the project, I would ask them, how was that process for you? How'd it go? Oh, it's great. It's this and that. And oh, fantastic. Do you have anything else I can work on for you? You ask for work, right? Do you have anything else I can work on? And they may have, or they may not have. And then I would ask them, is there anyone else you can introduce me to in the company that I might be able to help? So that was the beginning for that particular company of like maybe a 15-year run. And because they changed, they got sold. There was a whole bunch of stuff going on. But I would work with about 30 different people there every year. That would be kind of my cycle. And then I knew what their cycle was. And then you get in to the culture of the place and you understand how things work and you have a lay of the land of how the people are. And then you get to be like business friends with people. When my wife and I were expecting our first kid, I got called into a meeting late one day, and there were a lot of ladies working at this company in particular that I worked with. And I come into this late meeting and I'm like, why are we meeting? Like, what's so urgent? And I walk in and there's my wife sitting there and a bunch of balloons and all these people from product development, and they threw me a baby shower. Like, yeah. I was like, what? Like I was so touched, but I had, it's these professional friendships, these relationships that you develop with people. And then, you provide solutions through your skill set. You're reliable. You have to be reliable. If you're not reliable, you're done. First off, you have to be, I don't want to say agreeable, but I guess you have to be agreeable within the parameters of what reason is, because I had a client yell at me once. I don't do that. No, I'm not doing that. Who do you think you're talking to? It's an appropriate show of strength, an appropriate show of just mutual respect. I don't yell at clients. I never would. Don't talk to me like that. So, you're kind of negotiating through these relationships while you're providing solutions, creative solutions to real world problems. And if you can do that, you'll make money. So you got to be able to get in front of people. You got to figure out what people need. And you see my stuff, like all my dragons and all that. Like the dragons, that's my stuff. Like that stuff I'm building for me and for selling for me down the road. And if somebody likes the style, I'll come in and I'll work something out with them. But you've got to figure out how to earn. And it's tougher than it's ever been because the world is bigger and, first world problems, right? I'm in the States and money's a little different here, but it's been tighter than it's ever been, I would say, for most people. And you've got to kind of be wise as you walk through and develop these relationships. And you're looking for clients who are going to be repeat clients. You need people who are going to keep coming back to you. That's the lifeblood of any business. So, I don't know if does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, getting in front of people, showing that you're reliable, and making those long-term connections. That is kind of a consequence of just being reliable and showing up and doing the work. Yeah, my thoughts on like the current situation is the world is bigger and there is more competition, but there's more opportunity than there's ever been. Like on my podcast, I've been interviewing like a different comic artist who kickstarts a comic book every week. And I mean, there's guys that are doing like, when Image Comics started, right? And McFarlane and all those guys teamed up and they did their own thing and they were making, well, I guess those guys were making like $1 million a comic, which is crazy. I don't know how many people are doing that, but there's plenty of people that I've interviewed on this podcast that can make like $20K off of one comic, which is crazy. Just kickstarting it and just doing podcasts and promoting it and having like a couple hundred people that are paying for your comic book. Those things are not uncommon, and people needing hands to do things like that. That's not uncommon either. When you approach a client and let's say you are ready to quote them, what is your, because any business is going to have their cards like held to their chest, right? And they're going to ask you like, what would you charge for something like this? I mean, I guess first off, obviously it would be different if somebody's personally commissioning you to do something versus a business. So how would you approach those differently?
Well, I would say first off, corporate money is great money. Like you want corporate money because it pays. So, I would look at projects, and I used to charge an hourly rate years ago. And for some clients, I still do because that's just what they need, because they've got to be able to figure it out, and it works. But I found with my bigger clients that if I did flat rates, and so a flat rate might be a number, and then you get 2 rounds of concepts, and then you get 2 rounds of color, and then beyond that, now you got to start paying me an hourly rate, or we'll come up with another contract then. But I figured, so back in 2002, 2001, maybe earlier than that, I guess. I was charging about 35 an hour. And it was okay, but I was fast. If you're fast and you're charging an hourly rate, you're losing money, right? You're not being compensated for your skill set. So I remember I had this epiphany, and it came through a project request from a client, and I was up to here with work. Like, I had no more room. Like, I had too many plates spinning, and if I had anything else, everything was going to come crashing down. And Sarah called me up, and she needed an illustration done. She needed 4 illustrations done for some packaging. And I said, I'd love to do it. And it killed me to turn stuff down. And I expressed that. I said, I'm sorry, I can't. And she said, okay. And so about 5 minutes later, she called me back. And she said, hey. And I said, hey, what's up? She said, so I need you to do this. I said, oh, man. I said, I'd love to, but, I can't. And it'll and we kind of went back and forth, and she said, okay. 10 minutes later, she called me back. And she said, you have to do that. And I mean, she wasn't a jerk. Like, we had a good relationship, but she's telling me, I'm desperate. You have to do this. And I said, okay, give me a minute. And so I hung up, and I thought about it. I thought, time-wise, I don't know, maybe it'd be $1,000, $1,200 or something. So I thought, okay, I'm going to make this work for me. And I called her back, and I said, I don't know. I said, I can do it, but it's going to be like $3,000. And she said, okay, great. And there was no arguing or anything. It was like she needed it. And so I hung up the phone, and I was like, fantastic. I was like, the next 2 weeks are going to be miserable. I'm going to be up all night. But what it taught me was that hourly didn't matter to them. The deliverable mattered. So I changed with that client and with many clients, my pricing. And it just became, this is the cost. This is the block cost. So that changed my income. My income could be 35 an hour, but then it could, depending on the project, it could end up being $300 an hour. So it's where I really started to make money as work for hire. That was good. Yeah, those were good days. Yeah.
So where do you think the opportunity is now in terms of the different, like you do so many different things, like you do mural product design, you've done concept stuff. Where do you see like a supply and demand that is favorable to the artists?
Yeah.
Where do you see that?
Well, I'm betting there's going to be a lot more than I mentioned, because you just mentioned some too. I know there's so many opportunities, and you have to figure out what it is you want to do, what it is you can do, and what it is around you that needs you, right? Those are the 3 things, really. And the need outweighs what you want a lot of the times. I mean, if you got to put food on the table. So what I would say for me, product development is still pretty big. Designing, conceptualizing what people need. And then part of the product design, there's so much in the product design pipeline. It could be designing the character. It could be working with a sculptor. It could be working with manufacturing. It could be flat art or stickers. It could be, I'm doing a whole bunch of environments right now for a game company. And
wait, you're doing environments, but you're doing it for a product design thing, or are you saying
anything that's sold is I guess a video game that you buy is a product, right? Okay. So right. It's in that realm. I can't go into the details, but it's in that realm. So
I understand you can't go into details about it, but when you say environment art, you mean doing like breakdowns of like a game level, and then showing like the breakdown of like the architecture,
right? Like it's that. Literally, I'm illustrating the stage, the setting for so it's everything from concept through to the final art.
Do you enjoy that? That sounds like fun.
I do. It's a different part of things than it's newer to me. And
are you a gamer at all?
No, but if I had time, I'd probably be. I could total. I love playing games.
Yeah.
I just know that I don't. I wish I don't have time. If there were three of me, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I know what you mean, man. Yeah, like my original love, or I guess it's the same for all of us coming up like in this generation of like media. It's like animation, comics, and games. Like the worlds it is that people have created in games is just like it's so inspiring, especially like the levels and stuff like that. The amount
Yeah.
of storytelling it is that you can do in a level. And yeah, that seems like something that's such a specific skill. That's something that I'm trying to build into as well, with my own work, and trying to use it as like a portfolio to find similar things like that. Yeah, I love stuff like that. I love like the visual storytelling and an environment, the taking the interactivity to the next level. Because I always want to play around with like Unreal and Unity and stuff like that. But like you said, it's just like that's a whole nother skill set to learn, as opposed to being more on the side of what we do, where it's like, okay, I focus on really the fun stuff, which
Right.
is the visual storytelling, the player's path, how you're going to move this player through the environment through using light or through using color or the vantage point, right? Because those are all things that are related to what we do, because it's all about focal point, contrast, rhythm, and these sorts of things. That just because a game designer understands the tool set, that doesn't mean that they understand the design. And what I've learned, like I'm doing a game jam right now, and what I've learned from just like creating these little breakdowns of environments and props and stuff like that, is that the the tools of design they're all the same, right? Like across all mediums. Like you have rhythm, you have contrast, focal point, color, temperature, these sorts of things, and they're just like a natural. They're like a natural thing. It is that, like a natural language almost, right? It's like I remember hearing from Valve whenever they would create their levels for like Half-Life, and they would talk about how it is that they would use just simple things like a contrast of a color on a house that would immediately pull you to that house and would communicate to the player that that house is enterable versus all the other ones that are just props. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. That's our what we're supposed to do is lead people through a visual. If we're talking visual, and we are a visual process here. So there in a game and storytelling, you're trying to lead people somewhere, and there's ways to do that, whether it be perspective or sound or light. I guess sound. I know we're talking about all the beyond visual arts, right? If you're getting into gaming, sound and music, and then storytelling, and you can tell story by narration. You can tell it through visual. You can tell it through written word. Maybe there's a song playing that's giving you a clue, right? There's so many tools to work someone through something creative, and that's what we're supposed to do, right? I mean, I guess in product development, I'm working people through a process to get something made, and so I need to deliver in that moment. What is it that's going to get them to the next stage of the game, so to speak?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally. Do you like I said, I understand that you can't talk about any of it, but like, is there any particular games that you like really geek out on in terms of like the design that you look at it and you go like that you've learned from, or that you've looked at in terms of the way you approach it?
I would say I would say as much as anything, it's about movies I've seen or other artists' work. You know, it's animation. I have a good friend. He happened to live in the area, and we just became friends. And he just retired from the film industry, and his name's Michael Spooner. And he was a Disney he worked on the original the Ralph Bakshi Lord of the Rings back in the day. And
Oh, wow.
And Michael was the VP of visual design for VeggieTales for a period, but he's worked on Shrek, he's worked on the Hotel Transylvania movies. I mean, and he's an environment background artist, incredible. And that perked something for you.
Hotel Transylvania. I interviewed the art director Marcelo Vignali on my YouTube channel.
Yeah. So what's his name again?
Marcelo Vignali.
Yeah. I thought it was a different name, but I have heard that name. But you know, Michael's been an influence on me because I've seen his work, and so, you know, again, everything for me is how do I serve the story? How do I serve the people I'm working with and get them there? You know, I could geek out on so many games, and I'm a Star Wars guy from way back. So, you know, I would play Battlefront with my son, and you know, it was just very Star Wars. It was great design. It looked great. I wish I had more for you than that.
Yeah, I got a couple for you that you might find interesting. Like there's a guy I interviewed on this channel. His name is Reinstall Paul. I'll send you some of his video breakdowns on BioShock Infinite and BioShock Infinite, but also the original BioShocks, and he breaks down like the environment storytelling and the little clues of like the subtext of the stories and that sort of thing. It's really, really cool, man. Like if you want a game that has like a crazy amount of storytelling that's just kind of like it's almost like Stanley Kubrick-esque, you know what I mean? Like Kubrick he almost had like 3 movies in one movie, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you could read so many things into it. The original BioShock game is very much like that with the environment art. There's a lot going on in it. So yeah, I'll send you some of that stuff.
Thanks.
Yeah. I love that stuff. I feel like that's the skill that will never really be able to be replaced, which is like that visual, that ability to tell a story. Because even when you talk to a client, if they're not versed in understanding how to tell a story, then it becomes obvious to you very quickly, right? It's like a lot of people look at a lot of the AI generated stuff and they say like, well, you can basically generate the exact same thing, and you can to a certain extent, but it's not the same thing as somebody who understands like the principles of design and the principles of storytelling.
Right.
Because otherwise it's just, go ahead.
No, I was agreeing. I said totally.
Yeah, man. So I guess we're getting close to an hour here. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up. It's kind of late where I'm at. So
cool.
But I appreciate you coming on and chatting. Yeah.
Thanks for having me. It was a real pleasure. It's great to meet you, and it was fun. Yeah.
Cool. Cool, man. So I'm going to include your links to your website and your social media stuff with your YouTube and everything in the description box for people that want to check out your channel. And your channel is mostly geared towards creatives that want to run a business. So you have a lot of interviews. You have interviews with Carlos Hunt. We talked about that before. What else do you have on your YouTube channel?
Yeah, I've got Alec Gillis in there. I have interviewed a number of effects guys, and then just people in different areas of artistry. And then I have I have some how-tos, like how I approach things. You're going to start seeing more of that. Like I'm going to start doing more demos and process of how I draw and think and get things from here to there. And I would say just in closing, if I may, process is so important. Like I'm not really as bothered with what you decide your process is if you're an artist, but you need to pay attention to the details and learn process and look at what other people's processes are. How do they do things? And then I want to encourage every artist out there that you got to find your people. You got to find good, supportive people who aren't in competition with you, but they're for you. And some of them need to be artists, some of them need to be creatives, and some of them need to be just other people in your life. If there's somebody who's not for you, spend less time with them. I mean, if it's family, you got to figure that one out. But if it's a friend or somebody else, like, life's too short. And then, the last two things kind of go hand in hand. And it would be draw, paint, create, keep creating. If you love to do it, you'll do it in your free time. And don't mistake obstacles for failure. Don't give up. Don't mistake obstacles for failure. But don't think that you've arrived maybe when you haven't. Just a couple.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's very true, man. Yeah, that what you're talking about like making sure you have supportive people around you. That is very true. Somebody, you can get a jealous person around you, and that person can trip you up for a long time if you let them.
Oh yeah.
So it's the worst, man.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, then we're going to go ahead and close out this podcast. Like I said, all your links are in the description box below. So thank you for checking it out, guys, and take care.